Welcome to part 8 of our tutorial. So in this tutorial, what I would like to do is let's rig this character, rig him up. So one thing I wanted to point out is that in the last tutorial with the textures, I ended up in Substance Painter, and that was the end of lesson 7. So the only thing that I did from Substance Painter, I just simply exported PBR textures, and here in Maya I just simply went to Substance. And if you guys don't see this tab or a shelf, right, what you need to go do is go to Windows, Settings, Plugin Manager, and in here just type in Substance, and you should see the Substance bundle. So as long as you have this loaded and auto load, that will, I would turn all these on. You should see this button, right? So when you do see this button from Substance Painter, it's very simple. You just click on this workflow button and just simply select your maps wherever the folder is where Substance Painter exported everything out. And as soon as you say apply, a material will be created for you in Maya, and you just drag the material onto your model, and this is the result. So it will look beautiful. And the once you drag the Substance Painter material on, the reason mine looks relatively good is because I also, you can see right here my button is on, right? So if you turn your button on and go to Arnold Lights and add a Sky Dome light, that will allow you to also pull in any HDR image that you like. This is just, I think, some free one from hdrhaven.com that I just plugged in, and that gave me the lighting, right? And I think I also have an area light in here. Well, I can actually show you. So this is the HDR map that I grabbed, and this is the light that I created just in front. It's very simple, nothing fancy. By now, you should be, if you watched any of my previous videos in the channel, I show how to do all this many times. So pretty basic stuff. So the next thing is, let's talk about rigging. Now, when you rig a character, the default joint human IK rig that they give you is in the T pose, right? So the legs are straight and the arms are straight. It's literally like a T. And if we want our character to work with all the motion capture files that are available, you know, even like on Mixamo, right? It would be a lot easier if our character was also in T-pose as we rig him up. So let's do this. It's relatively simple. It's not necessary, to be honest with you. You could rig him in this A pose, but it would be a lot easier, and you have much better results plugging him into motion capture if he was in T-pose. From my just personal past experience, that's what I've learned, but again, I feel like maybe it's more of a preference. But what I would like to do, if you get to this point, let's go ahead and select the bottom of his foot. I'm also gonna go to topology and click on the middle of the character, so I want my symmetry on. And if you click on any of the polygons in the bottom of his feet on one side, right, we should be able to go to self-select and just drag the fall-off radius all the way up to his leg, maybe to like his pelvis, somewhere around there. And what I would like to do is grab my move tool and just move these feet in just a little bit. Now, as you're moving them in, you might say, how do I know how much to move them? Well, we want this spot here near the pelvis. If the joints go straight down, there's going to be a straight line here. So essentially, if the ankle is aligned with the side of the pelvis, then you're in good shape. So this should be pretty much perfect. The other thing that I would like to do is maybe grab the rotate tool and let's go ahead and rotate his feet a little bit as well. And move him a little closer. Now, once I rotate my feet, it does look a little funky. It looks like his toes are bent in. So maybe we can just dial down our fall off here and just maybe let's go ahead and straighten this out a little. So it looks a little more natural. Okay, that looks good. And finally, the arms. The arms should also be in T-pose. So let's go ahead and do that. It should be pretty easy. Let's go ahead and just click on one of these loops. Holding down the Shift key, you can just double click and it will select the entire loop. And I'm gonna hold down the Shift key and then click on period on my keyboard to grow my selection all the way up his arm. So I'm gonna go even further. So somewhere around this area I think is pretty good. And now if you hold down Shift and a Windows button, or if you are in the Mac, you just need to make sure whatever you're holding, you're pressing, you want to make sure that this cursor goes into a plus mode, and then you can drag a selection. I'm not really sure on the Mac, because I have a Windows, it's funny, I have a Windows keyboard with the iMac. It's kind of silly, but if I click on my Windows and Shift key, I get this plus, and then I can select the rest of the polygons. And you can see that all this area is yellow, right? And of course, if I press B, you can also see that all of this is selected. So just make sure that all of this is selected. I'm gonna press B again. And let's see if we can put his arms up in the T-pose. And maybe I can grow my selection a little more even. Let's give it a shot. I'm gonna go to rotate, and I'm gonna jump into my side view. I'm gonna hold down D and then drag my pivot right where his shoulder is, sort of in the middle. Press spacebar to go out, and let's press spacebar while hovering over this side view, and do the same thing. Hold down the D key and just position the pivot about in the middle of his arm. Spacebar, hover over the perspective, you go to spacebar. Let's see if we need to move this even more. Maybe I'm gonna move it a little higher. And now what I'm gonna attempt is just move his arms up. And if it's not looking right, like this looks weird to me, that means you need to grow your selection a little more. So go up a little higher and just see if you can get to the point where it kind of makes sense naturally, right? I'm gonna press W and go up. All right, I think this is feeling good. Let's go into object mode and review, and then make sure your topology looks pretty good. The flowing and the textures shouldn't be distorted too much, right? And finally, so this is, you can see now he's sort of in the T-pose. So this is going to be a lot closer to the to where we need him to be. And the only other thing I would like to do is, if I look from the top, I can see that his elbows are bent in. So let's go ahead and do the same thing. Move his, we still have the selection on, so I'm gonna hold down the Shift key, and this time instead of pressing the period, I'm gonna press comma on my keyboard and just kind of dial down the selection. And then let's jump into our top view. And if your HDR is on, you could turn it off by just going to lights. All right, I'm gonna hold down the D key and position this to where my elbow is, like here. And let's go ahead and see if we can rotate this a little better. Again, I'm gonna dial down my selection, and this is pretty perfect to what I was looking for. So I think let's go to object mode. Yeah, I think this is great. From here, we are much closer to where the motion capture default stance is at, right? All right, so I'm happy with this. I'm gonna press Control S to save it. And let's go ahead and go to Human IK. If you don't see this little tab, just make sure that this little button is on. Toggle the character controls. All right, and let's go ahead and bring a skeleton. So I'm gonna say create a skeleton. Once I do, you can see a blue skeleton was created, but I can't see him because the mesh is kind of covering him. So I'm gonna click on this button here to actually see the joints. And now we just have to quickly align them with the mesh. So he's gonna be kind of like the puppet, right? So let's go ahead and press spacebar and jump into our front view. I'm gonna turn off my lights. I'm going to also turn on my joins. And another thing we could do is turn on the texture and the lights if we wanted to for it to look, you know, appealing, pretty, right? Let's go ahead and start doing this. So I'm gonna grab this joint here, grab my move tool, and just shift it over right where the pelvis is, somewhere around here. I don't want to go too far outside. The knee, if you hold down the D key, that's going to allow you to just make sure you don't have self-select on, turn that off. But holding down the D key will allow you to move the joint up and down without moving the other joints. So it's a cool trick. But one of the biggest secrets of rigging, especially the legs from the front, is that you never want to go to the side. You always want to keep this straight, again, if you want it to work well with motion capture, right? So this front view, and I can also turn this button off if I don't want to select my mesh. This line here has to be straight, so keep that in mind. That's important. So that's going to be my knee right about here. Let's jump into... Now, if we want to mirror this over, right, because we just did these two, if you want to copy it, you just go to your Human IK section here, click on this button here, and that's going to mirror over the joints, right, position-wise. So you can see how they're nicely aligned. Let's go ahead and do the feet. I'm going to go into my side view and do the same thing. Turn on the joints X-ray, turn on the texture, turn on the lights. And in this view, we can move the joints left and right. That's okay, as long as it's not the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position the knee where it's bending closer to the end of it, right? Because this is where it's going to actually deform. So try to visualize like the legs deforming. You wouldn't want to bend it from like this spot here, right? Because then you have all this mesh to fold. But if you put it here, the deformation of your knee is going to be looking much more natural. So keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to grab my ankle and drag, put them in place. And now this is kind of, oh, I'm realizing my character is actually below the line. So this is the line of the ground. That's not good. Let's go ahead and actually select him. And I do need him to be on the floor. So he should actually stand on the floor. That's really important. All right, because we did that, let's go ahead and check this area here. So this still works, right? I'm gonna turn off select mesh. This still works, the kind of the pelvis bone and the knee. Okay, so that's good. Let's go back into the side view and take a look. This needs to be positioned somewhere here. The ankle should be around here. And this is the kind of the strange part. We don't have the toes. I don't have them on. Let's see, toe bones. I don't have the toe bones on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put this in the middle of right about here, right? So sort of like the sole middle is where you want to put this bone. All right, let's go ahead and jump back into this view. I'm going to select this entire chain and mirror it over. And I actually don't need the attribute editor right now, so let's close that. And mirror left to right. Okay, so now the legs are finished. They are looking good. Let's go ahead and move up to kind of, let's see. Let's do this part here. So this could be somewhere here, right? So again, visualize yourself even bending, right? So if you bend over, this is where the bend would be, where the round circle is. So this right here. Then you have another one here. And maybe another one somewhere here. So this is kind of, you could see the clavicles right here. And let's do the neck. So the neck is going to go up here, and for the neck I definitely need the side view. So I'm going to go holding down the Alt key and middle mouse. I can kind of pan all the way up, and I want actually wouldn't mind if this was more like this, because I do want it centered in the middle of the mesh, right? You can have a curve on the side. Now remember that that's okay. But you could see what I'm doing. I'm maintaining, sort of going in the center of the mesh, right? All the way up. And for the neck, what I would like to do is put it right where the neck is bending. So when the character says yes, you know, it's going to be here. So the neck is going to bend right there. And what you want to do is take this and put it in the middle of his head, because that's going to drive all these other pieces like the hair and the side hair and the mask. It's all going to be linked to this guy here, even the jewelry. All right, so we got that, and let's go ahead and jump back into our front view to kind of review. So finally we just have the arms. So for the arms, and we only need to do the side. Always do the left side of the character. Your right, his left, right? Because then you can use this tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of figure out where the clavicle is. And this line here also needs to be straight, just like the leg needed to be straight. This too has to be straight. Now, let's look at the fold of where the shoulder is going to fold for this piece. That's going to be more like here, right? I know he has huge triceps, humongous, but the fold should be somewhere here, right? Like in the middle of the shoulder. So when the shoulder bends down, you know, some of this is going to go in, and that's okay. But as this kind of stretches, this needs to be in the middle of the shoulder. Then I'm gonna grab the forearm, put it where his elbow is. I can see the creases right here, and we'll do the same thing from the top view. And for the wrist, I just need to find where the wrist is bending, somewhere around here. But again, very important that this line stays straight. Okay. Next, let's go jump into the top view, and let's do our magic, turn all this on. Very nice. All right, so here we actually can go left and right a little bit. So, I mean up and down. So I'm gonna go in the middle. I like the shoulder. This is gonna be the elbow. The elbow needs to be more like here, I feel like. So this is the bend. The wrist is going to be here, and it's okay to move this left and right a little bit. That's okay. And let's go ahead and zoom in on the fingers. And this is the part that is probably the hardest, is the fingers. So you want to grab all the fingers, and initially, before we align all the fingers, just do the base joint first, right? So you know where your knuckles are. This is kind of the knuckle. So this is the pinky knuckle, and this is going to be the ring finger, and this is going to be the index finger, right here. So then you got, I mean, this is the middle finger, this is the index finger. You know what I'm saying? So this is going to be the knuckle here. So you got the kind of the 4 knuckles. Then you got this, and this needs to be somewhere in this area, right? Where you're bending. You can look at your own thumb and see that it's bending right around here as the base. All right, now let's go ahead and kind of start aligning these. So I'm going to align it first. And we're going to need multiple views, not just the top view, obviously. But it needs to look good from every view. So let's start here. All right, so this looks pretty good. I'm going to jump into my, I don't think I'm going to do the front view. I'm just going to go straight into perspective view. And let's see if we can make this a little better, right? If you select this, you can press F, and that's going to help you kind of pivot around. And what I always do is, to do the fingers, I grab the base, grab my rotate tool, and find the end of the thumb, which is right there. And this is a little tricky, but you have to go into object mode, and using the middle, you kind of want to align it with the bottom of the finger. So just like that. And do the same thing here. Make sure this is in the middle of the hand, which it's not, right? So you could clearly see that it needs to be moved down. And then again, find the bottom of the finger and just kind of move it into place. So it's pretty easy. Once you do a few of these, you kind of get a hang of it. But that's definitely one of my least favorite parts of rigging, is the fingers usually. All right, so let's put this about in the middle and do the same thing. Find the bottom and put this into place. And you really want to maintain the orientation of your bend if you can, because when you are posing the hand later on, and this is actually skinned to the joints, you want to make sure that your orientation, pivot orientation, makes sense, right? So if you want to close the hand, you want to just grab this middle guy and do this. If you move this, you know, like this or something weird, then this is not gonna, your fingers are gonna be all over the place, right? So be mindful about the orientation, the rotation of your joints. That's one of the biggest points I can make, right? To do when you're doing the hand. All right, so in my case, I'm gonna move this over and see if I can move this down. And then finally we have the pinky. Go ahead and move it about in the center or the middle, and see if we can bring this down. Maybe just a little more. All right, so then if you select your hand, you can holding down the Alt key, just make sure that it makes sense from every single angle, right? So it's inside, it looks good, it feels good. All right, really nice. So now let's go ahead and click on this joint here and do a mirror, right? So then it's going to be the same on that side. And that's pretty much it. We have successfully set up our human IK joints, and the next step is going to be just binding this mesh to the joints. So let's go ahead and do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select, first of all, do Control S, make sure you save your work. So let's turn this back on, and what I want to do is grab the middle of the joint here, so the whole skeleton selected. Holding down the Shift key, I'm going to hold and select the mesh in your outliner and make sure it's just nice and clean and it makes sense. Now before we link it, another thing you should do is go to your channel box and let's go ahead and make sure that we have clean history on this. So you don't want to have any history when you're linking. And let's go ahead and click on this button as well, freeze transformation. So all of our transformations should be zeroed out and the scale should be 1, because that's going to be our clean default pose for this character, right? So that's looking good. And now let's go ahead and jump into the rigging tab, go to skin, bind skin. Let's click on the options. I'm going to reset this, make sure that I have the same settings as you. For the next influence, I'm going to leave it on 5. And the most important thing here is probably going to be the bind method button. So honestly, for my experience, I've been doing this for a while. This greatly depends on the type of character you have. So a lot of times you might have to try a different method and see which one works best in your case. Sometimes characters have, 20, 30 different meshes that are not combined. You have different elements. So it greatly depends which method you use based on the complexity and the type of character you have. So before you bind it, I strongly suggest, again, make sure you save it so you can always go back if you needed to. And then you just sort of jump into, I don't want to say experimental mode, but sort of, especially if you're new, right? You just want to experiment and see what looks good and what works. So for me, I'm going to go to geodesic voxel and select that first and see if that works. And let's go ahead and leave this just as is and just do, let's just do apply and close and just see what happens. All right, when you click outside, you can see that now the joints turned colorful, so it's indicating that it's now driving the mesh. And if we do some tests, for example, let's grab the foot and see if we can rotate it, and we can see that's working. Let's grab this joint here and make sure it's bending. It looks good. I'm gonna grab this leg. That feels good too. All right, let's just keep going up. I'm gonna grab this. Very nice. So you could see how Maya did most of the work for us, and it's looking honestly pretty great. Let's grab the. So we do have to fix his chin, right? So the chin is not working, so we're gonna fix that. That's our first problem so far. Let's grab this and see what's going on here. So we do need to adjust the weights under his shoulder or his armpit. That's kind of weird. So that's kind of a second problem. Let's go ahead and see this. This looks good. The wrist looks good, and finally let's check the fingers. For the fingers, we could even holding down the shift key, select. Let's select all of these and just check it out. That looks good. And let's just do one, make sure that it's just driving the one finger and not the others. So I can see that it's actually affecting this finger as well. I don't know if you can see that, but that's going to be important to fix, right? And the reason it's actually doing that is because I believe it's because our fall off, we set it to 5. Maybe that's a little, you know, too much. So this is one of the parts that I was saying you can experiment. When we did the skin, bind skin options, the maximum influence or the fall off, if you dial down the fall off a little bit, maybe, you know, to 0.15 or 0.10, and max influence can go to like 4. Sometimes the automatic binding will do a perfect job, so it wouldn't have these issues where it's like this finger is fine, but this one is not, right? It's selecting these. But maybe that's a good opportunity for us to learn how to paint weights as well. So let's go ahead and fix his neck, right? So I'm gonna click on the mesh, go to skin, go to paint skin weights, and click on options. And I'm gonna close my outliner, and this is what comes up. So what I'm gonna do next is you can either find neck in this drop down, or you can right click and say select influence, and you can see that the neck, character neck joint was selected. And with the paint, with the white paint or gray, right, it's showing me what it's influencing and what is not. So like the chin is dark, so you could see that that's a problem, that this actually needs to be all assigned to these joints. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a selection. And when I do make a selection, I don't want to select the joints. I'm gonna uncheck the joints, but I'm gonna make a selection of all of these points, because I want all of this to be pretty much 100% linked to the neck. And what I'm going to do next is go back, and I'm going to click on this button here, and let's go ahead and do a replace. And I'm going to set my opacity to 100 and value to 100. And while these are selected, I'm going to flood it. Now watch the chin when I flood my verts. You can see how everything just got brighter and the chin became really bright. And now there's kind of a definitive line, right? So what that's showing you is that the weights of all these verts are 100%. Now we don't want this line to be so strong, right? We want to fade this out. So what you want to do is go to verts, and let's go ahead and deselect this. Go back to object mode, select the mesh, go back into painting. And this time, instead of replacing it, I'm gonna go to smooth. And what I wanna do is, holding down the B key, you can change the size of the brush. And just like in sculpting, all you do is you just simply fade this out, just like this. So just go around the character and just fade this line out. All right, so it should look something like this. All right, really nice. Let's jump out. And now if you grab the neck, let's make sure we can. If you grab the neck and go to rotation, the neck should be perfect. And we can ask him, is your neck perfect? He says yes. Very nice. So the only other thing that we had is, let's go ahead and work on his armpits. Now the nice thing about painting weights is that you only need to, just like setting up the joints, you only need to do one side and then you can mirror it over. So let me show you how to do that. So I'm going to select this, go into paint weights. I'm going to right click and go to select influence. And I don't want all of this to be influenced by this joint. So what do I do next? I can say replace, and I can drive down the value all the way down, make my brush a little larger, and you can select a solid brush, or let's do a soft brush, and let's go ahead and just erase all of this influence all the way up to his kind of his armpits. So you're kind of just painting weights and telling Maya up to what point you want them or you don't want them. So you can paint them, and then you can hold down the shift key to smooth them. If you need to smooth this out, it kind of goes into the smooth mode automatically. And if you wanted to add value, you could just increase this slider here, and that will do that. Or you can do add, and then just do a little bit, and then you can see that it's gonna start painting in more weights. So a couple different approaches, right? All right, so let's review and see what this looks like. All right, so let's check our shoulder. So now if I bend this down, you can see that that's looking much better and more natural. As I'm testing this, I'm realizing I see something really strange by his neck, right? So as I'm moving this, there's a couple points by his neck that are also moving. If you see anything strange like that, let me show you how to fix that. All you need to do is select the mesh, go into paint mode, and just review the influences. How do you do it? If you right click, and you have to find the perfect spot, but if you right click and say select influence, you have this button here called use color ramp. It's gonna show you precisely, like, even though if you turn that off, it will show you what is being influenced with the black and white gradient ramp. But if you turn the color ramp on, it will show you even more precise of how certain things that have very little value, maybe even like 0.001, like it's barely affecting it where I won't even notice it, but Maya does have some assigned to it. So this will show you like an X-ray vision of each joint. And in my case, I saw that a little point was moving by his ear, right? So how do I fix it? I can just click on this list here and just kind of go down the list and see which one of these is gonna give me a blue paint by his neck, right? So let's go ahead and just work our way down the fingers. Right there, so I found it. So if I click on this index finger, for some strange reason, no idea why, you could see that a little tiny baby influence is being applied there as well. So to fix this, I can go to replace, set this to 0, the value, make my brush, you can choose hard brush or soft brush, doesn't really matter, but I know for sure that there should be no influence linked to this pinky, so I'm just gonna erase it. And let's go ahead and review other fingers and make sure there's no issues. A very useful trick, and I guess I'm happy it happened because I can show you how easy it is to kind of find the problem. So let's try this again. I'm gonna click on the shoulder and rotate it down. And this time I can see that this area is solid, right? It's not moving. So this is great. Now we do need to mirror it to the other side because this side is broken and it's also having the same neck issue. Very interesting. I'm gonna select on the mesh. Under rigging, I'm gonna go to skin, mirror skin weights, and let's click on the options. And we do want to set it to YZ, right? Because we want it to be, look at your gizmo, YZ is the middle, right? And I do want to go from positive, which is on the left side, to negative. So I want to copy it from this to this, okay? So I'm going to check this, and I'm going to say mirror. All right, as soon as I do, this should now mirror the other side. Let's see if that's true. It certainly does. So this is great. Let's make sure this is working. Very nice. And let's just double check everything else. Very cool. All right, so this is what you would want to do when you manually clean up the mesh using the skin weights. So in our other problem, we had some finger issues, right? So you could see exactly the same thing. If I right click on one, let's click on any one of these, select influence, I can see how this is being influenced. And I can also see if I click on this finger that I'm having some problems. So I'm gonna hold down the B key, dial down my brush. I'm gonna grab my soft brush, make sure my value is on 0 because I'm erasing. And I just wanna erase the paint that is on other fingers. And if it's not erasing, you do need to grab your hard brush. And that will be a little more forceful as far as deleting values. So I'm going to delete all this. All right, so let's double check and make sure. So that is the technique you want to use to kind of adjust all other fingers, and then just use the skin mirror weights to mirror to the other side. Once you're done, the cool thing about this is that now we can select our joins, and in the human IK under source, we can switch this to control rig. And that will create automatically the control rig that will allow us to do animations on our character. So now, instead of grabbing the joints, you have the IK and you have the FK, right? Reverse and forward kinematics. And you also have the controller, so you can grab the controller and move your character as you please, and he will obey, right? So that's how cool this is, and you can see that controllers are working really nice. So in the next video, let's play around with plugging him into some motion capture and maybe creating a custom animation, as well as I also want to add the cape and maybe a sword to our character as well. So let's just check the leg real quick. Very cool. All right, so let's end our lesson for rigging here and pick up in the next lesson where we can do the cape and play around with a couple animations as well. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.